Part 11. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 102. Hearing Xiu Wanfa say this, Yang Peng sneered, thinking that this old guy wanted to save face before he died, and didn't take it seriously at all. Said that he was pushing forward again, intending to use his invincible body to directly beat Xiu Wanfa to death, but at this time Xiu Wanfa suddenly shouted underworld devouring god technique. This is what Yang Peng only felt in himself. The surroundings were suddenly imprisoned, and his life was constantly being devoured, with a look of horror in his eyes. Fairy Bulletin Xian from the Xian Cai realm was even more incredible and said it turns out to be the dark god devouring technique. It absorbs the energy and blood of others to supplement one's own skills. This was the skill of the Dark Immortal back then and should have been lost. That's right. Everyone around them showed shocked expressions when they heard this. Ming Xian. He was a very popular figure back then. Legend has it that he was very popular in the world with his magical power of turning around, and he was even rarer to have an opponent. I just don't know why he disappeared suddenly. Some people said that he died, while others said that he went into seclusion and went to a higher level. But no matter which theory he said, the immortal underworld was never seen again since then. At this time, Xiu Wanfa looked at Yang Peng and said with a smile, "Boy, do you think that my life at such an old age is in vain? I know that you are invincible and invulnerable to all methods, but I still keep using my magical powers and kung fu. I can't fight you. This is the moment I've been waiting for. When you are careless, I will absorb all your energy and blood for my own use. Outside, I don't dare to offend the forces behind you, but here, you can't fight me." After saying that, he laughed crazily. At this time, Yang Peng's blood was being sucked away, but he still laughed. Looking at Xiu Wanfa, he said, "Old guy, you do have some brains, but that's all. Do you really think you can absorb my energy and blood? Although I don't know where you learned this technique. But I can tell you that Immortal Ming was killed by my ancestor." When Xiu Wanfa heard this, he suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. At their level, this premonition was definitely not without purpose. The helpless man wanted him to withdraw his hands and stop the underworld soul-eating technique, but he was horrified to find that he could not withdraw it no matter what. At this time, I heard Yang Peng continue to say, "Let me tell you, when the immortal underworld died, he also used this underworld soul-eating technique on my ancestor, but his end was that all the energy and blood in his body were burned out," he said. In the end, Yang Peng's energy and blood actually ignited, and Xiu Wanfa suddenly howled in pain. It turns out that Yang Peng has used the burial body to practice Yang Kung Fu to make the blood as bright as flames. In the words of their clan, this is the blood of Yang Yan, and mortals who touch it will die. This also shows the so-called achievements of the Yangshi clan. They began to practice the blood of Yanjian from a young age. The first step was to bury the body. They discarded both the body and the mortal blood in the body, and then used the skills to practice Yanjian. The blood of the immortal body can achieve a higher level, which is extremely terrifying. As the voice of Xiu Wanfa weakened until it was silent, a generation of veteran Nine Tribulations Lord was buried here. The people next to him, other than marveled at Yang Peng's cultivation, did not have any sympathy or sadness, and then continued on their way. After seeing it, Tou Mengzhan felt that his so-called Yanjian blood was not suitable for him, so he was not among his hunting targets. But now is the time to improve his cultivation. As the thunder calamity becomes more powerful as he goes forward, Mengzhan suddenly thought of an interesting thing. He said to Bai Xiaotian and Long Zhentian, "Let's spread out first. I'll go do something and we'll meet up at the back." After saying that, before the two of them could reply to him, he turned around and walked away. Bai Xiaotian looked at Mengzhan, really didn't know what to say. This envoy had been like this since he met him. He insists on doing whatever he wants, and he won't listen to others at all, but forget it, who makes him have that strength himself? Those so-called geniuses are really nothing compared to him. I am afraid that this time the geniuses never imagined that one of their nightmares has already come to this place. Long Zhentian didn't care. Even if he did, he couldn't do it now. Although he said he didn't care about Bai Xiaotian, he couldn't leave anything behind. Being cautious in doing things has always been Long Zhentian's fault. Even in the end, he didn't want to let Bai Xiaotian go and let him bury the divine messenger with him. But I'm not afraid of accidents, and I'm not in a hurry. At this moment, the Thunder Tribulation mountain range suddenly shook, and golden light suddenly shone in the depths. Everyone knew that this was a sign that the treasure was about to appear. Immediately, everyone rushed towards the depths. Everyone was on guard against each other, but they kept rushing, because no one wanted to waste time here. Meng Zhan was also among them. At this time, Meng Zhan looked at everyone and showed a bad smile. Now let you go through the tribulation again. After speaking, he looked at his god and demon points, 1578.4 billion points, and directly raised his cultivation level to the 5 tribulations cultivation level. Cultivation, 9 tribulations realm gods and demons 4 tribulations, 647.1 billion gods and demons died 5 tribulations. There was a loud sound in the body, the seeds of the great tribulations split, and the surrounding thunder tribulations suddenly accelerated, and the intensity increased infinitely. At this time, everyone was panicking. What happened? Why are thunder catastrophes suddenly becoming more frequent? Seeing the lightning tribulations falling continuously around them, the major geniuses and fairies could only keep dodging, but the thunder tribulations became more and more frequent, and they kept striking at everyone. In the end, everyone had no choice but to resist, using magic weapons or exercises. Fortunately, the intensity of the thunder tribulation was not high, and they barely reached the power of the 6 tribulations. At this time, Meng Zhan looked at everyone and felt happy in his heart. In this case, why don't everyone just be more exciting and continue to improve their cultivation? Cultivation, 9 tribulation realm gods and demons 5 tribulations, 876.4 billion gods and demons died 6 tribulations. The seeds of great tribulations are constantly turning over in the body, but at this time, the heavenly tribulations are constantly falling on Meng Zhan's body 920 times. At this time, the human emperor's seal in the body suddenly merged with the fate of the human race, constantly resisting the thunder tribulation, helping Meng Zhan, who was seeking death, to slow down the power of the thunder tribulation. But those people around were crying. At this time, they were no longer falling, but were completely raining down on the calamity, and even the power of the calamity was constantly increasing. It even vaguely has the power to reach 8 tribulations, which is simply terrifying. If it happened occasionally before, they could still dodge. Even if it happened more frequently, they would use their skills to resist, and the lightning disaster at that time was not terrifying. But now the thunder tribulation has completely reached the level of 8 tribulations, and the thunder tribulation has even changed, with a faint red light falling. That was the legendary world-destroying thunder catastrophe, a world-destroying thunder catastrophe like rain. Just resisting had exhausted all the strength of the people's continuous support. But the person involved in the tribulation was surprisingly relaxed. Although Meng Zhan's body was constantly being torn apart and repaired by thunder tribulation, which looked terrifying, but with the seal of the human emperor and the luck of the human race protecting its origin, thunder tribulation was just constantly training the seeds of the great tribulation. The people around were not having a good time, and they didn't know how long the rain would last, so they all fled the place and ran outside. They thought it was because everyone gathered here that they attracted such a powerful thunder tribulation, and they did not dare to run deep into the thunder tribulation mountain range. _ 17,681. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 103. However, there are also people who rely on their own abilities to escape to the depths. They think that the thunder catastrophes here have been terrible in the past, and they will not be so frequent when they reach the depths. As for Mengjian surviving the tribulation here, no one has thought about it at all, and they have not even considered it. They saw Mengjian being smashed into pieces and then restored again. As long as he has practiced some powerful recovery skills, who would have thought that a madman would survive the tribulation here? After about a stick of incense, the seeds of great calamity in Mengjian's body continued to be tempered, and the lines on it became more apparent. Mengjian felt that his strength had risen by more than 2 levels, and now he could kill even those so-called 9 tribulations geniuses. At this time, Mengjian saw that several people had escaped from his thunder tribulation area, and he did not take care of them. Instead, he ran with the people behind him, and the thunder tribulation also moved with Mengjian. At this time, I only heard someone shouting, "Damn it, who is this bastard who was struck by lightning? Why does the thunder keep chasing us? No, it must be because of something, otherwise Lei Ji wouldn't be able to be so riotous. The most likely thing is that there are too many of us, so we spread out and stay far away." Mengjian started to have a toothache when he heard this. In this case, we can't trap and kill them, and the most severe thunder tribulations are about to come. After these thunder tribulations, he will become the master of the 5 tribulations. How can we let them run around at this time? Then he shouted, "Everyone, the scope of the thunder tribulation is too large. I think we might as well resist together. I think you have all exhausted your previous thunder tribulation skills because of the resistance. Some people began to think after hearing Mengjian's words. Yes, most of them are not as powerful as those so-called Tianjiao fairies. They are just trying their luck here. Now that they haven't seen the treasure, they are going to feel cold. After all, no one wants to. If you die, it is better to hold together to keep warm. If you are not careful, you will really fall into this kind of thunder tribulation." Then someone echoed, "Okay, let's temporarily form an alliance to fight against the thunder tribulation together first. I hope you will make a great oath to fight against the thunder tribulation together during the tribulation. You must not act behind your allies' backs." When the rest of the people heard this, they also felt that it was reasonable. They did not resist together before because they were afraid that others would do something wrong, and making an oath of the Dao was the most credible way. When they saw someone starting, everyone took the oath of the Dao. Then they gathered together. Of course, Mengjian also made an oath, and he is not afraid of being backlashed. Because he has no intention of playing dirty tricks at all. The thunder disaster alone is enough for them, and there is no telling whether they can survive. Cross-dash. Then nearly a few hundred people gathered around and began to use magic weapons, maximized their respective skills, and began to resist. Bulletin Mengjian also used the heavenly halberd. After all, the last 3 thunder tribulations were no joke, but at this time, he felt extremely happy. He was definitely the first person in the past to have killed so many people to help him fight the thunder disaster, and these people were also typical of people who were sold and helped to make money. But thousands of miles away, one of them carried a big sword behind him. Looking at the people who were going through the tribulation together, he couldn't help but have a trace of doubt in his eyes. Is it really because of their large number that the thunder tribulation suddenly became stronger? But it doesn't look like it. If it was the thunder tribulation that changed strong, then they should have sensed some kind of powerful existence, but they are all 9 tribulation lords, but their own skills are powerful. And now the thunder tribulation mountain range only allows 9 tribulation lords to come in, and there are even a few, even the masters of the 10,000 god realm who specialize in formations were unable to break it. But in the end, he didn't have a clear idea, so he shook his head. It was none of his business anyway. Whether they lived or died had nothing to do with him. He just hoped just don't have such a thunderstorm in the future. After saying that, he stood up and flew in. At this time, the people who helped Meng Zhan overcome the disaster were already extremely frightened. The thunderstorm was now even higher, and it was already as good as 9. The thunder tribulation has happened. You know, they are only the masters of the 9 tribulations, and when they are going through the tribulation, they have to find someone to draw the formation and collect a lot of things to overcome the tribulation. Now they have to go through the tribulation on their own. How could they not be afraid of the nightmare of the calamity? The first thunder fell, and the thunder calamity, as thick as a bucket, came to the world like a thunder dragon, with Meng Zhan as the center, swallowing it in all directions. In an instant, hundreds of people's lives were taken away by the thunder calamity, and the remaining most of the people who came down were vomiting blood and felt that the thunder calamity had entered the meridians and were in danger of their lives. But at this time, they had no choice but to carry it on. If they were lucky, they could pick up a small life. If you go out, you will die faster. The second thunder tribulation was twice as thick as the first, and fell into the crowd again. After the thunder tribulation passed, there were less than 100 people standing on the field. Some had even been chopped into pieces. The ashes were scattered, and the remaining people were frightened to death. No, I don't want to die here. Help, can anyone help me? Bastard, are you crazy because of the thunder tribulation? Who can save you at this time? Think of it yourself. What on earth is going on with this thunder tribulation? Could it be that someone is going through the tribulation? When Meng Zhan heard this, he suddenly felt guilty. Is there such a smart person here? Can this be seen? But then after the other person finished speaking, he felt relieved. That guy just now was a lunatic. I think you are a fool. Except for this kid who is the master of the 4 tribulations, the others are all 9 tribulations. Do you think this kid can survive until now if he survives the tribulation here? He was designated to be the first to be killed. Now what? It seems that, Qianyo's, work is not over yet. Is this thunder calamity going to kill us all? Huh, joining your alliance is the biggest mistake. Now there are thunder and tribulations all around, and the power is already 8 tribulations. It is impossible to escape in the current state. I have no choice but to resist, hoping that this thunder disaster will pass as soon as possible. But some people backed down. Seeing that they continued to resist the thunder disaster, they said, I'm crazy not to accompany you. I'm going out. As soon as he heard that someone was leaving, someone immediately echoed, let's go together, so we can still have a chance. As soon as someone agreed, the people nearby began to join the fleeing army. Seeing that this alliance of less than 100 people was about to break up. In an instant, there were no less than 20 people in the fleeing team. Without delay, everyone flew out to resist Lay together. GCN.save, recommend, and share. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 104. As a result, just after leaving, Wan Lei fell, killing several people in an instant, and the remaining dozen people ran back. At this time, no one said, "You are stupid. You still don't believe it? Haven't you seen that there has been no lightning in our small circle for a long time? I guess the 2 thunder catastrophes just now are the last thunder catastrophes in this area." After listening to his words, everyone nodded. It is true that there has been no lightning disaster for a while. I hope what this kid said is true, but he must never show up again. At this time, Meng Zhan knew clearly in his heart, this is not a thunder disaster. This is the last disaster of my 5 disasters. This thunder disaster is holding back the ultimate move. But it's strange to say that even if he holds back his ultimate move, he shouldn't be able to do it for a long time. Thinking of this, even Mengjian is a little unsure. Could it be that this last moment exceeded the level of the 9 tribulations? Don't talk to them about this, as you may not be able to withstand it. Just when I was thinking about it, a pressure fell instantly, and everyone looked up in shock. The mood is extremely complicated. Is this going to bring about a thunderstorm? Is the thunder tribulation already threatening? What exactly is this? Suddenly I heard someone trembling and said this place is not the end of the thunder disaster, but a more powerful thunder disaster is brewing. Run quickly. Where to run? 113. You can still run just now. The pressure of the thunder tribulation is already so strong. I am afraid that this last thunder tribulation will swallow up the entire area in an instant. After it is over, we will all die. It is impossible to resist. No, I'm not willing to accept it. I was struck to death by this unprovoked lightning disaster. Why on earth, you bastard? Don't give up, everyone, try to resist for the last time, maybe. This man may not have said it out loud, because he knew that this was simply impossible, because the pressure of the thunder tribulation was still rising and even spreading. This means that the current shocking thunder catastrophe is constantly expanding, and it has reached a point where they cannot stop it at all. Not to mention them, even the masters of the 10,000 god realm would probably turn around and run away. This is not within the scope of the 9 tribulations at all. This is simply a world-destroying thunder tribulation. Finally, the thunder tribulation was brewing and began to fall. At this time, the thunder tribulation could no longer be called thunder tribulation. It fell slowly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its pressure could directly crush people to death. A curtain of light fell, and there was no sound. Everyone was enveloped in coercion and could not make any sound. In an instant, the light shone, and the lightning disaster was completed. At this time, the human emperor's seal in Mengjian's body wrapped around the human race's luck and instantly rose to the top of his head, protecting Mengjian's whole body, while the seeds of great calamity in his body completely burst, constantly absorbing the thunder calamity and pressure that split Mengjian. For a moment, it was like 100 million years. During this period, Mengjian felt that not only his body, but also his consciousness was being torn apart. At this time, the immortal king token suddenly glowed and entered Mengjian's sea of consciousness, protecting him. Mengjian's consciousness. After the world-destroying lightning catastrophe passed, Mengjian looked at the surrounding area, except for the piece of land under his own feet, the rest of which had become an abyss. The so-called allies who had gone through the tribulation with him had long since disappeared. The human emperor's seal returned to Mengjian's body again, and the immortal king's token also came out of the sea of consciousness and returned to his body. But Mengjian was horrified to find that the great tribulation seed had disappeared. Could it have been completely chopped into pieces by the thunder tribulation? It shouldn't be. This is the seed of great calamity. It was born to meet the calamity. How could it be destroyed by this thunder calamity? At this moment, Mengjian felt something in his mind and discovered that the seeds of the Great Tribulation were slowly condensing in the air, and they were thicker and thicker than before. The lines on them were clearly visible. When the Great Tribulation seed was completely condensed, I saw that the lines on it looked like the oldest symbols, but they also seemed to be some kind of primitive beast, which I didn't understand at all. The seeds of the Great Tribulation slowly returned to the body. In an instant, Mengjian felt a shocking power burst out from the seeds and injected into his body, constantly tempering his body and consciousness. Dirt is constantly being squeezed out of the body, and the body is becoming more and more translucent, and even golden blood has begun to appear in the blood. Feeling that his body is getting stronger, and even seems to have reached a certain peak, could he continue to overcome the tribulation? This time I don't rely on the system to redeem it. Instead, he directly wanted to break his shackles and be promoted to the Lord of Six Tribulations. Sure enough, in less than a moment, the shackles were broken and he directly became the master of the Six Tribulations, but the strange thing is that there is no thunder tribulation. Mengjian looked at the sky and found that the sky that had been surrounded by thunder clouds for hundreds of millions of years was now filled with clouds. Although it could not be said to be a clear sky, the sky could already be seen. But Mengjian himself has not stopped yet, and is continuing to break the shackles and rise to the rank of Lord of Seven Tribulations. At this time, Mengjian suddenly thought of something in his mind. Could it be that the calamity cloud in this place has completely dissipated and cannot be condensed because of the relationship just now? Can't help but myself, even if others come to break through, there is no need to go through the tribulation? Although there is such doubt, there is no way to confirm it, because as the person just said, in the thunder tribulation mountains, except for Mengjian, the rest are all 9 tribulations lords. And Mengjian did not stop until the Lord of 8 tribulations, and the feedback from the seeds of the Great Tribulation stopped, but Mengjian found that he was already absorbing the power of the outside world. In this way, in the future, not only relying on the system, I can also improve my cultivation. Now that Mengjian's body, consciousness, and cultivation have been completely absorbed, he feels that there are several rays of consciousness behind Tan Chen himself. There was a sigh in my heart. Fortunately, the terrifying pressure of the thunder tribulation just now prevented these people from coming forward. Otherwise, I would not have been able to fight back in the state just now. But now that they had lost the best opportunity, Mengjian didn't care anymore, and started to gather more of them, and found that it was Bulatinxian and Sukong and a few others who should have come in later and had never seen them before. There are still people who have entered the Tribulation God realm at the entrance of the mountain range. It is no longer known how many people there are in the mountain range. But there are probably only a few who are truly strong, not to mention that Mengjian is now the master of the 8 tribulations, and he was not afraid of them at all during the 5 tribulations. These people were looking at me quietly, not knowing what they were thinking about. They felt unhappy, and then they released their pressure, wanting to test the gap between them and themselves. But something happened this time. There was actually the aura of thunder and calamity in his pressure. Suddenly everyone thought that the destruction just now was the coming of another thunder disaster, and they dispersed in a rush. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 105. Watching them run away, Mengjian didn't bother to chase them. He still had to explore the depths of the mountains, and the treasure would probably be revealed soon. Although I don't know what it is now, the golden light has risen to 10,000 feet, and it seems that it is entirely possible that it is an immortal weapon. This is enough to arouse people's attention. You must know that the immortal soldier is not just talking about it casually. According to legend, there is an immortal soldier who swallowed his master and developed complete spiritual consciousness. After being known by others, he was besieged by tens of millions of gods, but no one survived after being killed by the immortal soldiers, and then he fled without any news. Although I don't know whether this legend is true or false, it shows how terrifying the immortal soldiers are. Thinking of this, there is no need to hesitate. The problem now is to find Bai Xiaotian first, who is one of his own. As for Long Zhentian, Mengjian has never thought of letting him go out of the Thunder Tribulation Mountains. At this time, Bulatinxian flew quickly into the abyss. He just felt an extremely powerful pressure of thunder and calamity, and then disappeared, so he wanted to take a look. As a result, she saw a terrifying thing, that is, under the thunder tribulation that could destroy all gods, an 8 tribulations lord actually survived. Not only that, there was no damage at all under his feet, and he was completely protected by him. It seemed that this man must have some kind of treasure in his possession, and he might even be the legendary immortal weapon. Now is not the time to kill him to grab the treasure. Let the news go out first and let Jose follow him quietly. When someone grabs the treasure, they will both lose, and then you can sit back and reap the benefits. What if he was discovered and followed? That's easy to handle. With his appearance, Bouletin still has this confidence. He said that the two of them would go together. He didn't believe that the Lord of Eight Tribulations wouldn't agree. Thinking of this, he flew to a hidden place and prepared to explore Mengjian. Although Bouletin thought so, others didn't think so. In their eyes, it was inevitable that Mengjian had a treasure, otherwise how could an Eight Tribulations Lord survive the world-destroying Thunder Tribulation? Since an Eight Tribulations Master is not worthy of possessing such treasures, just kill him and then snatch the treasures. Moreover, those who can come in have the means and the treasures given by their ancestors. As long as they are not involved in the thunder disaster like those unlucky ones, then there is no problem in saving their lives. Immediately, someone began to prepare for a sneak attack on Mengjian and followed him in the direction he was going. Mengjian felt that there were no less than 4 auras following him. It seemed that he was being treated as a fat sheep. These people were really fighting for the treasure. But it doesn't matter, even if they don't look for me, I will kill them one by one, and then snatch the magic weapon. The purpose of my visit this time is to ensure that the treasure is not from Mountain 1, but also from this group of Tianjiao fairies. In Mengjian's view, these people are here to give gifts. It's a pity that the Thunder Tribulation just now was too terrifying. Those people didn't even have magic weapons, and the bodies were all gone. It was so heartbreaking. Thinking of this, Mengjian stopped flying, found a place to go down to be, pretended to be injured, and healed his injuries there. The other people also discovered the existence of several people besides themselves. It seemed that they were all here for the treasure on Mengjian. It seemed that they had to take action early. Otherwise, if someone else takes the lead, all the efforts will be in vain. Suddenly, several lights and shadows appeared in front of Mengjian, looking at Mengjian and several others coldly. Mengjian looked at the people in front of him and couldn't help but feel so happy that he could trick people again. Then he pretended to be hurt and said, "Guys, is something wrong?" He was seriously injured in the thunderstorm. Indeed, even a powerful treasure cannot completely protect its owner in that situation. Someone immediately said, "Brother, I see you are injured, but were you injured in that thunderstorm?" Mengjian heard this and said, "Ahem, it's true, but it's nothing serious. Please go, brothers, let's fight for treasures deep in the mountains. I won't go there." "Oh? How can that work? We are all human beings and should help each other. I think it is better for me to take my brother with me." When Mengjian heard this, he thought to himself, "I'm so hypocritical. If I'm really hurt, I'm afraid I won't be left alive by you in a while, but I won't take action now. Let you kill each other first." I enjoyed watching the excitement. I immediately said, "No, I think you are all sensible people. I have a treasure, and I am afraid I can no longer protect it, but I want to survive." Speaking of this, Mengjian stopped talking, but looked at a few people with interest. Those people were all shocked. They didn't expect this kid to show off his cards directly, but it's no wonder, he might even have trouble standing up now. This is a wise choice. If you are not prepared, it is really possible to save a life. After all, no matter how good the treasure is, it is useless if there is no life. Then a tall, muscular man said, "Boy, what's the treasure on your body? Take it out and see if it's enough to save your life." After hearing what he said, several people nodded secretly. That's right. Although this kid's treasure is definitely not a mortal thing, but they still have to see what it is and whether it is worth using all their trump cards. After Mengjian heard this, he thought for a while and said, "Okay, the treasure I have is a seed. Everyone, I don't need to say anything more." After hearing this, everyone was shocked. Seed. How could a seed that could protect its owner in such a thunderstorm be just an ordinary seed? Look at this kid, is he a life seed? Or small world seeds? Or maybe it's the thunder calamity seed? No matter which one of these seeds they are not simple. As long as they are planted into oneself and grow with oneself, one's future achievements are very likely to enter the fairyland. Legend has it that there is a man named Hongwudi who has a small calamity seed buried in his body. That thing is not something that can be obtained casually. It's not just a matter of chance, it also requires courage, because the seeds of calamity are all in great terror, and only by daring to be in great terror can you get the seed of calamity. Moreover, Hongwudi put the seeds into his body, and within 1 billion years, he entered the fairyland. He really achieved the so-called invincibility at the same level. Regardless of any opponent, no one at the same level can defeat him, and he can even kill people who are 3 levels higher than himself. Thinking of this, several people's eyes suddenly turned red, and they looked at Meng Zhan with greedy expressions. The person who spoke before said, "Boy, come to my side, Yang Hao. My eldest brother is Yang Peng. He will protect you here. Come here quickly." Yang Peng is nothing, I am still Wan Xing, Mr. Wan Kong is my eldest brother. Haha, I don't think you want to make any money anymore. Do you really think your rookies are big shots? My master Kenshin has entered the Thunder Tribulation Mountains. When Meng Zhan heard this, he asked, "Why did Jian Xin come out again? Who is this person?" Kenshin? The person who once killed 1,000-foot-long body in the 10,000 God realm with the 9 tribulations major. Save, recommend, and share. The original works. After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 106. It's good that you know this. Get out of here. I've already notified our master. He will be here soon. The other 3 people all frowned when they heard this, and immediately notified their own geniuses, but the news they received indeed told them to stay put and will arrive soon. Several people's faces were happy at the same time, and they looked at the man who just called himself Kenshin. The sword servant said, "Don't be too proud. Your master has not made a breakthrough in the past hundreds of millions of years. In our opinion, his qualifications are just mediocre. Yes, I even think that the person who was in the 10,000 God realm and had a body of 10,000 feet that your master killed back then was only mediocre in cultivation and had nothing to be proud of." Suddenly the sword servant's face turned red and he said angrily, "Okay. When my master comes later, I see you can still be so arrogant." Yang Hao 450? Obviously doesn't have that much patience. Although he knows that his brother Yang Peng is coming, he also wants the seed. He has been suppressed by Yang Peng since he was a child. Although he has good talent, his family is more, many resources were given to his brother, and his ancestor praised him even more, but only said a few words to himself. Thinking of this, Yang Hao went up directly, preparing to grab Meng Zhan's uniform. Meng Zhan saw finally, "I couldn't help but have a headache. Why did my words attract so many people?" And it seemed that they had all informed the geniuses of each family. This was troublesome. Although I was not afraid of them, I had not had enough fun pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger. Ah! He sat motionless immediately. Meng Zhan believed that there was no way those people were watching Yang Hao come to catch him, not to mention that there was a silly bitch behind him who kept staring at him and was about to make a move. Sure enough. Yang Hao, just when Yang Hao moved, the sword servant drew his sword to stop it and stabbed Yang Hao. Upon seeing this, Yang Hao punched his backhand and directly used their family's burial body training Yang technique. The fist collided with the tip of the sword, and sparks appeared. The two of them stepped back and looked at each other. At this time, Wan Xing said, "Yang Hao, you are too impatient. It seems that you don't want to give this boy seed to your brother. When he heard Wan Xing's words, Yang Hao's face instantly turned ugly. Although he thought so, it was different when someone said it. He immediately said angrily, Wan Xing, don't say nonsense, be careful, I'll pull it out of you. Tongue. At this time, the person who had not spoken or reported his name directly attacked Yang Hao's back. A bone spur instantly appeared in his hand and penetrated directly into Yang Hao's back. Suddenly Yang Hao felt a sudden pain in his face. Immediately start practicing Yang Shen Gong. But the man succeeded in one move and then returned, and he disappeared just like that. It was extremely strange. When the sword servant saw it, his scalp went numb immediately, and he said, this person is actually the Shadow Thorn of the Blood Shadow realm, and he is also on the mountain. Yang Hao was even more frightened. Although he was careless, practicing Yang Shen Gong on his own body was in a state of continuous operation that it could be broken so easily. If I hadn't suddenly felt a danger rising at that moment and was forced to move a little, then this stab would have penetrated directly into the heart from the back. What technique did that guy practice that was so powerful? He immediately said angrily, you bastard, you came out and hid after a sneak attack. Do you think you can hide? Yang Hao turned on his spiritual consciousness to the maximum, but found that there was no fluctuation at all. Meng Zhan was also searching. He was now extremely curious about what kind of technique this guy could hide so well. But he immediately overturned this idea. This guy must not be good at martial arts, his spiritual consciousness has been qualitatively improved in the Thunder Tribulation just now. He dares to say that if he is now the second among all the people in the mountain range, then absolutely no one dares to say that he is the second one. So even if this man has some kind of magic weapon, it is impossible to have a space magic weapon. He deliberately stopped after leaving the area where there was no Thunder Tribulation, just because he was afraid that they would find that the space in that area was normal and then tear the space apart and escape. Here the space is chaotic. Even if you have mastered the power of time and space, you don't dare to try it at will. You must know that if you are not careful, you will be torn apart by the space. It is definitely not a joke. Then there is only one possibility. Thinking of this, Meng Zhan was excited at the moment. The guy most likely has something like a small world, and he hid directly in that small world after the assassination, so others couldn't find it. Meng Zhan was a little surprised by his conjecture, but the more he thought about it, the more it seemed possible. Yang Hao was still howling wildly, but the Shadow Thorn still had some movement and breath, and he didn't dare to relax even though he was breathing heavily. At this time, the sword servant was anxious, hoping that his master would arrive soon. Yang Hao was already difficult enough, but now that someone equal to his master appeared, he had no way to compete. Wan Xing was also extremely cautious, looking around for fear that the guy was trying to give him a hard time. As a result, a scream was suddenly heard, and the Shadow Thorn appeared again. The target was still Yang Hao, and the bone spur had completely disappeared into Yang Hao's eyebrows. The two of them were even horrified to discover that the man was assassinated from the front. Yang Hao didn't even react, but the bone spur penetrated his brain. It was really terrifying. Shadow Thorn looked at Yang Hao, whose life was slowly disappearing, and then said coldly to the two of them, get out, otherwise you two will die and your master will not be able to save you. Jian Pu and Wan Xing looked at Yang Hao's body. He felt cold in his heart. This guy killed Yang Hao with only 2 blows. The Yang family's burial body, Lian Yang, was as paper-like in front of him. If the opponent is aiming at them, I am afraid that they will definitely die with just 1 blow. 3.2 They know it in their hearts and their bodies will never be as hard as Yang Hao. But there is a seed right in front of me, and I really can't bear to give up like that. Wan Xing thought for a moment and said, Senior, even if you kill us now, the people behind us will not let you go, not to mention that you have already offended Yang Peng of the Yang family. Shadow Thorn looked at Wan Xing. Okay, without any nonsense, the figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, the bone spur in his hand had already been pierced into Wan Xing's heart. When the sword servant saw it, he turned around and was about to run away. Suddenly, a bone spur came out of his back. He turned back to look at the bone spur and said, "Why, why?" Then his consciousness dissipated and he died here. Shadow Thorn withdrew the bone spur in his hand and said coldly to Meng Zhan, "Hand over the seeds and die." _ You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for 1,000,000,000 years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 107. Meng Zhan felt happy when he heard what this man said. If I hand it over, I will die, so why should I hand it over? Then he said, I surrender just to survive. If you let me die, how can I surrender? I will make your death comfortable, otherwise, I have plenty of ways to make your life worse than death, so don't challenge my patience. Meng Zhan shook his head, thinking that this silly girl has no intention of taking action. It seems that she wants to test my inferiority, but I'm afraid she will be disappointed, he. Then his eyes quietly looked thousands of miles away. Ken Shin, who was dressed in blue linen and was flying with a sword, already knew that his sword servant was dead, and now he accelerated his flight forward. Shadow Thorn also felt the sudden arrival of a breath, and immediately faced Meng Zhan without hesitation. Take action. Looking at the Shadow Thorn coming towards him, Meng Zhan tried his best to show fear in his eyes, and then fell back. At this moment, Buletin Xian from behind took action. A red light shot out, blocking the Shadow Thorn. 12 Shadow Thorn looked at Buletin Xian, knowing that he could no longer succeed, and then said coldly to Buletin Xian, I thought you wouldn't take action, but it seems you don't. It's time to wade through this muddy water. Buletin Xian looked at Shadow Thorn and said, even if I don't take action, you won't be able to succeed. I'm afraid you've also felt that aura. Do you think you can outrun him here? As soon as he finished speaking, the sword heart arrived and saw the body of his sword servant lying on the ground with blood on his chest. He then said angrily, who is it? Kill my sword servant. Before Shadow Thorn could speak, Buletin Xian said directly, this is the famous Shadow Thorn, I think you should know about it. After Jian Xian heard Buletin Xian's words, he looked at Shadow Thorn and frowned slightly. If the sword servant hadn't reported the seeds to him before, he wouldn't have gone to Shadow Thorn for revenge. After all, for a sword servant, it's not worth it to offend a master of the same level as himself, but it's different now. It seems that he is also here for this seed. This seed cannot be given to anyone in any case. This is his future path. Road. Then he said to Buletin Xian, thank you very much, Fairy Buletin Xian. Please condescend Fairy Buletin Xian to move elsewhere, otherwise I am afraid of hurting the fairy. Buletin Xian heard Jian Xian's words and kept sneering in his heart. Since the dignified Jian Xian is as disgusting as a hypocrite, he wants to monopolize Meng Zhan's seeds. He even said that he was afraid of hurting himself. Then he returned, Eternal Sword, Mr. Xian was worried, so I looked at the boy here. After all, he has only cultivated for 8 calamities. If you torture him to death, all our work will be in vain. After hearing what Buletin Xian said, Shadow Thorn he and his heart are no longer calm. Are you watching? Are you kidding me? We will fight for a while and we will both lose, and then you come over to pick up the slack. How can such a good thing happen? As a result, they stood on equal footing. The three of them looked at each other, waiting for the opportunity to hit each other hard. Suddenly, the surroundings were filled with murderous aura, and the air around them fluctuated due to this murderous aura. Our client, Meng Zhan, was lying on the ground in a fit of rage and looking at a few people. He felt that Yang Peng and Wang Kong were almost there. Moreover, the two of them have met now, and it is only because they are such a fat sheep that they can't bear to take action. Obviously, both of them know that their brother died here. It seems that there is something good to watch this time. As I looked into the distance, the golden light was still shining. It seemed that there was still some time before the treasure was born. Now I was watching the show and waiting for the treasure to be born. It was really comfortable. It would be perfect if I had something to eat at this time. It was a pity that no one knew what Meng Zhan was thinking. If they knew, they would probably kill him first. While the three of them were still looking at each other, they sensed two more auras coming at the same time. All three of them frowned. The situation was becoming increasingly unstable. But it is even more impossible to take action now. Those two auras are coming soon. If you take action now, you will have to kill the other two with one blow. Apart from that Shadowthorn, probably no one else here dared to say that, but his family knew about his family affairs. There is indeed a small broken world in Shadowthorn, which was accidentally discovered when entering a Jedi place, but now I can't refine it at all. It took a lot of strength not to enter even once. I just used this strength just to kill the three people quickly. I didn't expect that it would end up in this situation now. While the three of them were still making plans, Yang Peng and Wan Kong had already arrived. They looked at the three people in the field and Meng Zhan lying on the ground, and did not rush in without presumptuousness. Instead, he stood aside and watched a few people. As a result, the three people staring at each other turned into 5 people staring at each other. Meng Zhan all looked at them and couldn't help but fart. Suddenly, everyone's nerves were suddenly flicked like a taut string, and everyone's skills were running, thinking that the other party was about to take action. It turned out that no one took action, and everyone's face turned red after they reacted and looked at Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "Don't look at me. Where else can I go? My life is in your hands. Can you believe me when I say I'm going to fart?" Hearing Meng Zhan's rough mouth, Buletin Xian took a sip of his words, while the others glared at Meng Zhan, always feeling like they had been tricked by him. But because of this, the atmosphere relaxed a lot in an instant. Jian Xian spoke first and said, "Shadowthorn, you actually killed my sword servant. Let's not talk about that kid. How should you explain this to me?" Shadowthorn. Upon hearing this, he suddenly thought something bad in his heart. Not only did he kill the sword servant, but he also killed the brothers of those two people, so they must besiege him first. Then he said, "Humph, people die for money, and birds die for food. Don't tell me that you don't understand such a simple truth. Besides, isn't Fairy Buletin Xian already taking care of this kid, Buletin?" Xian was angry in his heart. The blame that had been placed on Shadowthorn was suddenly thrown onto him, and he immediately said, "I was afraid that the two of you would fight too hard and kill this kid, so I watched for you and Kenshin looking at it." With a smile on her face and watery eyes, everyone was horrified. This woman was too poisonous. With a few words, she threw the blame to Shadowthorn and Kenshin. Jian Xian said at this time, "Okay, everyone, please stop acting. Yang Peng, Wan Kong, your brothers also died in the hands of Shadowthorn. You can see for yourselves what to do." After saying this, unexpectedly he directly attacked Shadowthorn, who had already greeted the 18th generation of Kenshin's ancestor. After Yang Peng and Wan Kong saw it, they also understood what Jian Xian meant. It was true that there were several people in such a stalemate, so it was better to eliminate one of them first. Seeing that Kenshin and Shadowthorn were already fighting, the two also joined the battlefield. Shadowthorn was under great pressure at this time, and he didn't expect that he would become the first target. Then he said to Buletin Xian, "Fairy, why don't you come and help me? After they defeat me later, they might attack you." Underscore. Union set symbol hiding, recommendation, share. After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 108. After Bulatin Xian heard Yangxi's words, he said with a smile, I didn't want to fight. You guys beat you, I was just watching the show. Yangxi I cursed Bulatin Xian in his heart. He was watching a show. I watched it. You are simply waiting to reap the benefits, but these people are all smart people, so how can you let you take advantage of this loophole? The three of them kept attacking the Shadow Thorn, and the Shadow Thorn kept dodging and defending, adding a few scars to their bodies. Seeing that he was about to be forced into a dead end, he directly activated his skills and released his magical power 10,000 stars slash. Shadow Thorn threw out the bone spur in his hand and disappeared. The three of them all retreated when they saw it, and they activated their skills, ready to resist Shadow at any time. Thorn's magical power, 10,000 stars cut. They have also heard of this magical power, 10,000 stars slash, throwing the weapon directly, and continuously slashing around at an extremely fast speed, instantly accumulating tens of thousands of rays and bursting out at the same time. After practicing to the extreme, it can easily cut through a world, and the three of them looking at the bone spurs that were constantly slashing, Kenshin also released his magical power, the particle sword, and saw Kenshin constantly waving the long sword in his hand on the spot, and the sound of fire and collision continued to be heard in the air. This misty sword is similar to the 10,000 stars slash, except that the misty sword requires oneself to wield the slash, but the path of the slash cannot be seen, which is also extremely strange. Yang Peng saw that Shadow Thorn's magical power was suppressed by Sword Heart, and that his bone spur was not in hand at this time, so he rushed over without hesitation. Ba Yang Fist was used directly at Shadow Thorn using his own technique. Yang Peng's hands were like the light of the sun, directly blasting towards Shadow Thorn. But at this time, Shadow Thorn showed a sinister smile. It seems that you Yang family brothers are all they have the same explosive temper. It's a pity that I'll kill you first. Suddenly the Shadow Thorn disappeared from the same place. When Yang Peng saw this, he knew something was wrong and hurriedly activated the burial body Yang Kung Fu to the maximum. Then his spiritual consciousness spread around, thinking I wanted to explore the location of the Shadow Thorn. But I found that the Shadow Thorn had disappeared without a trace, and the other two people were also looking for the Shadow Thorn. Looking around, the bone spur had already fallen to the ground because it was not controlled by the Shadow Thorn at this moment. Shadow Thorn suddenly appeared, with a dagger in his hand, which was dark red in color, with bloody ancient writing flowing on it, just like the blood of the dagger, but the head of the dagger was like a hook, and the shadow looked extremely weird. The thorn slashed directly at Yang Peng's head from top to bottom. When Yang Peng saw the sudden appearance of the Shadow Thorn, his spiritual consciousness did not notice it at all. It was not until the dagger reached his head that his spiritual consciousness noticed it. The Shadow Thorn looked, seeing that he succeeded, his eyes were excited. As long as he killed this Yang Peng, he would have a chance to kill the remaining two people. But a terrible thing happened. Shadow Thorn found that he could not scratch Yang Peng's head at all. How could it be possible? His dagger was discovered along with that broken little world. It was extremely sharp. He once used this dagger to assassinate a strong man in the 10,000 god realm. Shadow Thorn named him Duanhun because of his discovery. This dagger can not only hurt a person's body, but also cut off a person's consciousness. But now it can't cut through Yang Peng's body, which makes Shadow Thorn extremely surprised. At this time, Yang Peng is not feeling well, although his body has been buried in Yang Peng's body. Kung Fu protected him, but his spiritual consciousness suffered a huge attack. Yang Peng suddenly panicked. Although he had treasures to protect his spiritual consciousness, he could not withstand the attack of this dagger. He suddenly exploded, his blood boiling, and he rushed towards. He grabbed it with Shadow Thorn's hand. Shadow Thorn suddenly felt a wave of heat coming towards him, and he couldn't resist it at all. The heat wave even seemed to melt his whole body. He looked at Yang Peng grabbing towards him and hurriedly backed away. But at this time, Yang Peng would not give him a chance to retreat. He directly used his skills to imprison the surrounding space, leaving Shadowthorn with no way to retreat. Shadowthorn also discovered that the surrounding space was imprisoned, and then used Soul Break to attack the surrounding space. Wanted to break the restriction, but Yang Peng was already in front of him, so he had to give up the attack and compete with Yang Peng. Jiangxin saw the right moment and directly released the magical power breaking Yuan sword technique, covering Yang Peng and Shadowthorn. Surrounding them the space was continuously slashed, and the bodies of Yang Peng and Shadowthorn were also attacked by the Po Yuan sword technique. They immediately put away their techniques and began to defend. Yang Peng looked at Jian Xian and said angrily, "Shameless villain, at this time, he directly betrayal, it seems I have underestimated you." Although he was attacked by the sword heart, Yang Peng resisted with his body and didn't care at all. The sword energy that hit his body only left a line of white marks. It was just the pain that made Yang Peng angry. But the shadow stab at this time was not that uncomfortable. His body was constantly injured by the sword energy, plus the injuries caused by Yang Peng before. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and ran away without hesitation. Wan Xing also would not let go of this opportunity, and directly used the technique, Void Hunyuan, also wrapped up Yang Peng and Shadowthorn, and chopped them off directly. Yang Peng's body was resisting the sword energy, and suddenly saw Wan Xing taking action, and his anger became even greater, and he directly burst out the magical power Bawang Jin, and instantly the fist shadows were heavy and aimed at Jian Xian and Wan Xing. However, Wan Xing's Void Hunyuan was not easy to break. The fist shadows were all swallowed up before they could reach him. Jian Xian also resisted. He resisted Yang Peng's attack and kept retreating. At this time, Shadowthorn's energy and blood were already boiling, and he was unable to fight back after being beaten by several great magical powers. Although Yang Peng did not release the Bawang Jin at him just now, the two of them were separated. He was too close and was directly implicated. He vomited a few more mouthfuls of blood and lay on the ground. Meng Zhan saw his mouth and said, "It's over, I'm going to die." After hearing Meng Zhan's words, Shadowthorn rolled his eyes, a surge of anger rose, and he spit out another mouthful of blood. Who knew that Meng Zhan saw it and hid it again and said, "I almost vomited half a caddy of blood, I'm afraid it will. You must be anemic, your temper is really strong." Shadowthorn ignored him and immediately forcibly adjusted his own skills and prepared to escape, but Yang Peng suddenly appeared in front of him and stepped on his chest. In an instant, Shadowthorn felt like a big mountain was pressing down on his chest. He was unable to move, and his chest collapsed. After forcing the two men back, Yang Peng prepared to deal with the Shadowthorn first. This kid was already extremely weird, and he had just discovered that he could attack spiritual consciousness, so it was impossible to keep him alive. After stepping on the Shadowthorn, he looked at the two of them. "Leng," he said, "you two come together." Jian Xian and Wan Xing didn't move for a moment after seeing it. Jian Xian said to Yang Peng, "It seems that brother Yang Peng misunderstood. Just now I was going to attack that shadow stabbed me, but you two are too close, so I have no choice but to implicate you." After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 109. When Wan Xing heard this, he scolded Jian Xian for being shameless, but he also said, "Yes, brother Jian Xian and I have the same idea." Yang Peng became even more angry at this time and said, "That's enough, you guys are. I'm a fool, but it doesn't matter. I don't care about you two anyway." Immediately, the force of my feet increased, and my skills exploded. I stepped on the Shadowthorn and broke it in half. Blood burst out, and my internal organs flowed out. Death Shadowthorn didn't have any chance to resist. Then Yang Peng rushed directly towards the two of them and started using his skills again, hoping to quickly deal with them. but Jian Xian and Wan Xing were not easy to solve. The two looked at each other and understood each other's thoughts, so they joined forces to attack Yang Peng. At this time, Meng Zhan and Bu Xian were watching a show, and Bu Xian started chatting with Meng Zhan. "Hey, do you really have a seed? What kind of seeds are they?" Meng Zhan looked at Bu Xian and said, "Of course, it's a seed born in response to a calamity." Bu Xian's eyes flashed and he said, "I don't know if what you said is true or false. How about you take it out and show it to me?" Meng Zhan glanced at his mouth and thought to himself, "The three of them are fighting against the big fool, but you are idle here, then I will find something for you to do." Then he said in a louder voice, "Okay, I give you the seed, and you protect me." After hearing Meng Zhan's words, Bu Xian immediately knew that he wanted to trick him, and then said, "That's no need, I don't think I have the strength to protect you, I'm just curious." Meng Zhan said again, "Since you are so curious, I'll give it to you. Anyway, I don't think they can keep me alive. At least you are still a beauty, so what I gave you will be more comfortable." As she spoke, she made a move to take out the seeds. Bu Xian heard the sound of her silver teeth gnashing, and then turned around and ran away without hesitation. She would not be so arrogant that she could deal with three people at the same time. Really? If he had enough strength, he wouldn't have stirred up the water just now and just took action. However, the three of them had already heard their conversation, and they were reluctant to let Bu Xian go. In fact, they wanted Bu Xian to get involved from the beginning. But the situation changed, and no one paid attention to him for the time being. Now that Shadowthorn was dead, there was no need to worry about anything, and he just pulled Bu Xian and forced himself into the game. Jian Xian directly used his body skills to run up to Bu Xian and said, "Fairy Bu Xian, get involved, otherwise you will die worse." After saying that, he slashed directly at her. At this time, Bu Xian also knew that even if he wanted to run away, these three people would never let him go. And he really didn't want to let go of the seed in this kid's body. This kid just now, if it is said to be a seed for calamity, then it means that it is at least a seed for small calamity. Looking at Jian Xian who stabbed him with a sword, Bu Xian did not hesitate and said directly, "Okay, since Mr. Jian Xian invited, Bu Xian and I have no choice but to join the game, but if you die in my hands, don't blame Bu Xian for being cruel." After saying that, he directly used the Xianguang magic technique, and suddenly colorful circles of light flashed around Bu Xian, which was really beautiful. After seeing it, Meng Zhan said in a low voice, "I'll go, this is really a dance at the slightest disagreement, bring your own colorful lights, is it?" On the battlefield, Wan Xing, Yang Peng, Bu Xian, and Jian Xian, the four of them were fighting lively, but the four of them were surrounding Meng Zhan, for fear that he would suddenly escape. Meng Zhan didn't care at all, just watch them fight. It was so hot that he wouldn't stop him, let alone run away. He would just let them play and end it by himself. Yang Peng was the most ruthless at this time, and he was completely suppressing Wan Xing's attack. Leave no room for anything. Wan Xing was also complaining in his heart at this time, constantly cursing Jian Xian. This bastard ran out to find Bu Xian to fight, leaving Yang Peng to himself. Although he would lose without knowing it, give him Yang Peng, but if the two of them really have to live and die, they will definitely hurt the enemy by 1,000 and themselves by 800. No matter what, it may be thankless in the end, but Yang Peng doesn't seem to have that idea at all at this time. Every punch was aimed at him with all his strength. This made Wan Xing scold Yang Peng for being brainless, and the anger in his heart began to grow. "Since you didn't hold back, I would use all my strength to kill you directly." Then suddenly the void around Wan Xing shook, and he directly used the void technique to imprison Yang Peng. However, this place is the land of thunder tribulation, and the void is unstable. In addition, Yang Peng is extremely strong in body training, so he can defeat all methods with one force. Suddenly Wan Xing felt extremely strenuous, and his handprints kept changing, and he shouted, breaking sky slash. He saw that the surrounding area was like being spread in two by a sharp knife, and suddenly split open. Yang Peng felt that he was constantly being pulled, trying to separate himself. 4-2. Yang Peng roared directly, circulated his skills, and shouted, refining the body to suppress the void. Immediately, I saw the void suddenly completely collapse, and the break just now also shattered. Wan Xing stepped back immediately after seeing it, changed his hand seal again, and shouted, Wan Kong forbidden break. A kind of strangulating force actually came out from the broken void, which kept tearing at the surroundings and even began to spread. Yang Peng wanted to retreat and escape from the area when he saw it, but found that he could not move at all. There seemed to be a suction force around him, constantly dragging him down. He knew that if he didn't escape or break through this area as soon as possible, he would definitely be torn apart by the strangulation force. Then he shouted, Lian Yang blood armor. Yang Peng's body, the blood continued to seep out of the skin, and then formed a kind of armor. The red armor was extremely bright, completely covering Yang Peng, only revealing a pair of eyes. Then Yang Peng pulled out a long spear, and kept dancing around, forcing the void. The strangulating power was broken, and then the surrounding void slowly recovered. At this time, Wan Xing was extremely uncomfortable. This was the strongest move in his technique. Normally no one could break the strangulating power in the void. It is a trace of the law of space. But now this Yang Peng is so powerful that it has broken all the laws. It is simply unbelievable. I have to take out the treasure given by the ancestor to suppress the Kong seal. This is a 6th level magic weapon, and its function is to supplement itself. To suppress the void and better use it for himself, but the consumption is too great, and he can only activate it twice. Yang Peng is even more upset at this time. You must know that this blood armor is not released at will, it is to be used at the cost of burning essence and blood. The spear in his hand is the 6th level divine weapon Purple Flame Coiling Dragon, which also consumes his own mana. Now that the blood armor and the divine weapon are used together, he must fight quickly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 110. At this time, Wan Xing also thought that Yang Peng's use of this move was definitely not a random release. Otherwise, he would have used it long ago and would not have waited until now. Although I am better than him, I am not much stronger. The battle just now has consumed half of my mana, and now it is used to suppress the Kong seal, which increases the burden. Yang Peng watched Wan Xing sacrifice the magic weapon, and naturally he didn't dare to be careless, but now that he had used the bleeding armor, and with the consumption of the purple flame coiled dragon spear in his hand, he could no longer use it up. Then he rushed directly towards Wan Xing, stabbing continuously with the spear in his hand. Wan Xing continued to resist with the Zhenkong seal. At this time, the surrounding void continued to shatter again. Kenshin and Buxuan saw that both of them were working hard, and they had a tacit understanding to slow down the pace of the battle. They kept staring at the two of them, ready to wait for the opportunity to kill them with one blow. Meng Zhan looked at Yang Peng and Wan Xing and thought to himself, Zheqiang is useless. He doesn't even take his head with him when he goes out, so he can't be eaten to death. Looking at the two of them, Meng Zhan knew that they must have been defeated. Kenshin and Buletin next to them seemed to be fighting brilliantly and desperately, but in fact it was all for show. It was just to make Yang Peng and Wan Xing relax so that they could fight with all their strength. Unexpectedly, these two fools were actually fooled and even took out the treasures rewarded by their ancestors. But it didn't matter who won or lost. Looking at the dead Shadow Thorn, Meng Zhan realized that this kid was most likely killed by an explosion. The best proof was that the kid's small world did not appear after his death. But Meng Zhan wouldn't say anything at all. The more lively their fight was, the happier he would be watching, and he was very sinister. Looking at Wan Xing, he was already covered in blood. It was not because he was stabbed by Yang Peng, but because his blood flowed backwards and seeped out from his skin. Yang Peng planned to kill not only Wan Xing, but also Jian Xian and Buletin Xian in the shortest possible time. Now he was not holding back at all, and every attack was extremely powerful. Wan Xing has been waiting for an opportunity. As long as Yang Peng shows a flaw, he is absolutely confident that he will have a chance to kill him with one strike. After all, his trump card is not only the Zhenkong seal, the ancestor also rewarded himself with many good things for this treasure. Yang Peng was extremely anxious at this time. He didn't expect Wan Xing to be so resistant. He was attacked so frequently that he almost turned into a bloody man, but he still didn't show any flaws. He couldn't delay any longer. Almost 1/3 of his blood essence had been burned, which was enough to make him feel distressed. Thinking of this, he immediately used another of his trump cards. The God-breaking needle, a 5th-level magic weapon, is a disposable weapon. It is an extremely insidious hidden weapon. Even though it is a 5th-level magic weapon, its danger is definitely not weaker than those of the 9th-level magic weapon. It specializes in breaking people's defense, even if you train your Yang body, you may not be able to prevent it. Yang Peng threw it towards Wan Xing's heart without hesitation. Wan Xing suddenly panicked and saw that Yang Peng seemed to have thrown something out, but he didn't see it. He could only maximize the suppression of the Kong seal to protect his whole body, but suddenly he felt as if his heart had been stabbed by something, and his eyes were shocked. How could this be possible? What on earth could it be that could suddenly suppress the Kong seal's defense? Then he looked at his heart, and sure enough there was a wound the size of a pinhole, still bleeding. Wan Xing looked at Yang Peng in disbelief and said with difficulty breaking, "The magic needle." Then he felt his body being twisted, not only his heart, but also his internal organs were being destroyed, and Wan Xing spurted out blood. He came out and fell down with unwilling eyes. Yang Peng snorted coldly, "You noticed it too late." Then he looked at Jian Xian and Buletin Xian. At this time, the two of them were also shocked. They were attacking and defending, and it seemed difficult to determine the winner for a while. But for some reason, Wan Xing suddenly stopped moving. He said the words "breaking needle" and then spit out a mouthful of blood and died. The two of them were extremely careful at this time. Who knew if Yang Peng still had a magic needle? If one came while they were not paying attention, they had no confidence that they could defend against it. Yang Peng also started to have a headache at this time. He only had that one magic needle, and now 1/3 of his essence and blood had been burned. If he continued to fight, he might not be able to beat the two of them. If you don't fight hard, you will reveal all your cards and not even get a cent, which is really unacceptable. At this moment of hesitation, Jian Xian and Buletin Xian were slashing at him together. Yang Peng immediately gritted his teeth, turned around, grabbed Wan Xing's body, and ran away. Although he can't get that kind of thing, Wan Xing still has a lot of good things in him. The Zhenkong seal alone is a 6th-level magic weapon, which is enough to make up for his losses. But when Meng Zhan saw it, he was not happy. He originally wanted to trap you to obtain the magic weapon. You are leaving now. How is this allowed? It seems that I can't pretend anymore. Although I like to watch the show, it's nothing to watch without even the treasure. He took action directly, Tyrannosaurus Tianchu used it directly, and Yang Peng suddenly felt a strong pressure from behind. He was so frightened that he thought it was Jian Xian and Buletin Xian who had taken action, so he didn't dare to look back and ran forward. But Meng Zhan would not give him a chance. The pressure directly hit Yang Peng and hit Yang Peng. Yang Peng found that he could not resist the pressure at all. He spat out a mouthful of blood and looked back in horror. But something strange happened. He found that Bulatin Xian and Jian Xian looked at Meng Zhan in shock, and then also looked at Meng Zhan. At this time, he didn't look like he was being manipulated by others. He looked at everyone with a playful expression, as if he was looking at a fool. Meng Zhan looked at everyone looking at him and said, "Don't look at me. I will fight again and again, but I won't run away with you, otherwise my treasure will be gone." If you can't hear what he said at this time, you are really a fool. And then Yang Peng said, "Asshole, you pretended to be injured to deceive us. Boy, I think you want to die." Meng Zanbuki said, "In your current state, you still want to kill me? You think about whether you can survive first." After saying that, he directly used 10 directions purgatory and hit Yang Peng, but Yang Peng looked at Meng Zhan and took action directly, stood up and directly raised the gun to fight, but the real collision with Meng Zhan, after getting there, he realized that this guy was too strong. Even in his prime, it was impossible to win against him. Yang Peng sweated on his forehead and realized that this guy was pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. But when he knew it, it was already too late. The 10 directions purgatory directly severed his meridians, and he flew out and lay on the ground. Yang Peng looked at Meng Zhan unwillingly and said, "Boy, don't think you can survive. I have a seal on my body. If I fall, my ancestors will definitely know about it and will hunt you down." Meng Zhan sneered, "Why, now you want to use your bullshit ancestor to suppress me?" After saying this, Meng Zhan directly took out the Hungtian halberd and killed him without any hesitation. Meng Zhan looked at Yang Peng, who was killed by him, and said, "Why, Lian Yang's body is not enough for me to hit in one go." Then he looked at Jian Xian and Bulatin Xian. The two of them knew something was wrong just now when they saw Meng Zhan showing off his power. Meng Zhan was clearly pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger's old man. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 111. Seeing the move at this time, he was even more sure. At this time, Jian Xian said, "Haha, it turns out that brother Meng Zhan is not seriously ill. In this case, I will say goodbye." After saying that, he turned around and ran away, but how could Meng Zhan give him anything? When he had the opportunity to escape, he took the Hungtian halberd and used the 10 directions purgatory to kill him. Jian Xian resisted and then said, "Meng Zhan, I advise you to stop here. You must know that no matter how powerful you are just an 8 tribulations lord. Don't think that I will be afraid of you if you kill a half-broken Yang Peng." After Meng Zhan heard Jian Xian's words, he said without hesitation, "Okay, I want to see what you can do to resist." After speaking, he increased his strength and continued to bombard the sword's heart. At this time, the sword, I was surprised in my heart, this kid actually has such a strong power. How is it possible? Even a pure body refiner like Yang Peng cannot display such a strong power. But what Bulatin Xian saw at this time was even more surprising. Meng Zhan kept bombarding the sword's heart back and forth, but the sword's heart was being flapped randomly by Meng Zhan like a swaying leaf. Bulatin Xian thought of this, no longer hesitated, turned around and ran away. Meng Zhan had been paying attention to her, how could he let her run away? He directly used the tyrannical dragon Tianxia, and the pressure directly suppressed Bulatin Xian. You must know that the pressure released by Meng Zhan at this time has the power of a world-destroying thunder disaster. After Bulatin Xian felt this coercion, she immediately understood that she was no match for Meng Zhan, and a crazy idea appeared in her mind. The previous world-destroying thunder catastrophe was Meng Zhan's natural disaster. Otherwise, how could his pressure contain the aura of world-destroying thunder and calamity? Thinking of this, Bulatin Xian didn't dare to stay anymore, and tried to escape despite the pressure. At this moment, a scream of Jian Xian came into his ears. When he looked back, he saw that Jian Xian had already followed Yang Peng. Same, cut in half. Then she saw Meng Zhan walking towards her, and the fear in her heart continued to increase. What kind of monster was this? He actually dared to survive the tribulation here, and he was able to survive another world-destroying thunder tribulation. Bulatin Xian kept retreating, but as the pressure continued to increase, she found that she could no longer move at all. She could only look at Meng Zhan in horror and said, "I don't want to do anything to you, just let it go, am I okay?" After hearing this, Meng Zhan laughed and said, "You didn't want to do anything to me? You were staring at me when I was going through the tribulation just now, and then you kept following me. What did you say you wanted to do? Are you attracted to me?" Hearing Meng Zhan personally admit that he was the one who was going through the tribulation just now, he was even more shocked and said, You were really going through the tribulation just now? Then you can survive, in your body the seeds are not small calamity seeds. Huh, that's pretty smart. That's right, my body is not a small tribulation seed, but a big tribulation seed. Do you want it? After hearing Meng Zhan's words, Bulatin Xian's head suddenly shook like a rattle. Yes, are you kidding me? Now I don't even know whether I can survive. There is no such pressure. Just look at what he did in such a short time. The internal energy to kill the sword's heart showed that Meng Zhan's combat power was definitely not at the level of the god of tribulation. She even wondered if Meng Zhan had some secret method that could suppress his own cultivation and deceive this barrier. Meng Zhan didn't want to. He was talking nonsense to her and said, "Okay, hand over all the things you have, and I will spare your life. Otherwise, I will kill you and take them later." After hearing Meng Zhan's words, Bulatin Xian was unwilling to accept it, but he had no choice but to hand over all the treasures, and then said, "That's it? It's gone. Can I leave?" Meng Zhan looked at Bulatin Xian's things. They weren't too many, but they were of good quality. There was a 7th level divine weapon and a 6th level divine weapon, and the rest were some pills and the like. Then he nodded and said, "Although I know there must be something else in you, but it doesn't matter. Beauty always has privileges, so let's go." After hearing Meng Zhan's words, I finally let go of the thought I had brought up, because I still have a 4-layer dazzling belt, which was given by my ancestor, and was refined into a natal magic weapon by me. If Meng Zhan takes it, if he left, it would be better for him to die. Although it was a 4th level divine weapon, because it was a natal magic weapon, its power was definitely not weaker than the 8th level divine weapon. Thinking of this, Bulatin Xian did not linger, fearing that Meng Zhan would regret it, and fled away into the distance. At this time, Meng Zhan looked at the ground and began to collect treasures. Then he seemed to be talking to himself or talking to someone. "Get up, I know you have something better. Don't let me do it, otherwise you will really die." But until he collected everyone's treasures, no one responded. Meng Zhan said with cold eyes, "If you don't drink a toast, you will be punished with a drink." The 10 directions purgatory and the tyrant dragon heavenly punishment were running at the same time. They picked up the Hungtian halberd and slashed it hard into the void. The Hungtian halberd sank directly into the void, and a burst of fire suddenly appeared. Shadow Thorn suddenly appeared from it, and half of his body had been killed by the Hungtian halberd. To chop it into pieces, he looked at Meng Zhan with horror in his eyes and said, How do you know that I have a small world and can also chop it?" Meng Zhan looked at Shadow Thorn and said coldly, "Humph, I knew it from the first time you disappeared, but at that time I wanted to watch a show and was too lazy to deal with you. Originally, as long as you were willing to hand it over, I didn't bother to kill you, but now, you'd better die." After saying that, Meng Zhan slashed at the Shadow Thorn again. At this time, he was seriously injured and it was impossible to resist. He was chopped into pieces by the Hungtian halberd, and his consciousness was completely destroyed. After his death, suddenly a ray of light appeared and continued to escape into the void. Meng Zhan knew that this was the little world, and he stretched out his hand to grab it. However, The little world tried its best to resist, and Mengjian shouted, "If you still want to resist, be honest with me." After saying that, he directly released the human emperor's seal. When the little world saw the human emperor's seal, it was like a mouse seeing a cat. It instantly calmed down and stopped struggling. When the human emperor's seal saw the small world, it was like a pervert seeing a big girl, and pounced directly on it. It passed over and absorbed into the seal of the human emperor. Mengjian was speechless when he saw it. "Damn it, this is a small world. I released you to suppress it, and you just absorbed it? So what have I been doing for a long time?" After the human emperor seal absorbed the small world, it directly entered Mengjian's body. Mengjian felt the emotion in his heart at this time, and the corners of his mouth were twisted with joy.